Killing Floor 2 has just released a new content update, and everyone knows what that means.
Mother Russia!
It also means that we are going to get a nice surplus of new players buying the game and older players like myself making a return. Now, if you have not bought this game and experienced its gory goodness, then I'd have to ask, what are you doing with your life? Go buy the game right now. If you don't, this man will shoot you with all of his Nerf guns. He is not a nice person. On a more serious note, there are going to be plenty of newcomers. I figured this would be a great opportunity to share some good knowledge on this 5-year-old beast of a game. As many already know, Killing Floor 2 is a challenging game. It is not for the faint of heart or for people with weak stomachs. It has no problem showing you who's boss. I am here to try and make sure that doesn't happen too often. I know that I am having a bit of a rough start here, but I cannot deny the truth. KF2 is like this by design. However, it is extremely fun and just as addicting. Me and a friend of mine have played the game for a literal whole day, and that is not an exaggeration. We died plenty of times, but we also won our fair share. During this all-day incursion, I realized that my friend had a way easier time playing the game than when I first started playing because of the advice and knowledge I was able to grant them. I have been playing KF2 since release, along with its predecessor back in 2009. So the amount of information that I can dump into this video could very well take up an hour. But I am not going to do that today. Today, I am going to provide the best tips and tricks that I wish I would have known before even starting KF2 back in 2016. So, without further delay, let's earn our dosh, kill plenty of Zeds, and level up. This is my idiot's guide to Killing Floor 2.
Gotcha!
I'm going to assume that you do not know what dosh is right away since you are clicking on this video. You have two currencies that are tracked in Killing Floor 2. One is dosh and the other is Volt dosh. Do not get the two mixed up. Dosh is what you use in between waves to buy armor, ammo, weapons, as well as upgrades for your weapons. Volt dosh is money you keep in your vault in order to unlock cosmetics. But we are not paying attention to that right now. Whenever you start a game in Killing Floor 2, you and everyone else will start off with 500 dosh each. You earn more by killing Zeds, or you can just steal it from your friends who are trying to give it to somebody else. Either way, it has to be earned. The amount you get from each kill is determined by the type of Zed you are killing and how much damage you do. Killing bigger Zeds will always get you more money, of course. You will also get a bonus amount allotted to you and any surviving party members if you survive to the end of the wave. So the key during the first 2 rounds in any match is to conserve your money and make sure that you are aiming for the head, therefore saving you bullets and killing faster. I always recommend just using the 9mm pistol during the first couple rounds so that way you can save on ammo for your primary weapon. It's the most inexpensive gun to fill, and it is very accurate, ideal for dealing with those lower ranked Zeds. The more dosh you have, the more likely that you will be able to upgrade your weapons or buy a new one. Personally, I always use starter weapons for the first 2 to 3 rounds, so that way I am saving up money. The starter weapons for each class are actually halfway decent most of the time. I sometimes upgrade those weapons around round 3 or 2, if I am able to afford it. Do take note that this currency is purely temporary. Once the match is over, you will not take any of that dosh with you. You will start over again with 500 dosh in the next match. So, when those boss fights come up, spare no expense.
Right on the money.
Killing Floor 2 is heavily regarded for its flexible gameplay mechanics. You want to rock shotguns only? Go right on ahead. You want to have ultimate flexibility with assault rifles? Enjoy. There are even explosives and melee weapons that can be used with their own perk designations. What are perks? I am so glad you asked. These are not your traditional Call of Duty or first-person shooter perks. These are KF2's versions of classes, so to speak. The point of this section is to stress that the game has something that everyone will love when it comes to the gameplay loop. If you find yourself being more of a supportive role, perhaps the perk literally called support or medic is a good fit. You want to bring the fight straight to the Zeds and you want to get close and personal? the Berserker is probably right for you. Perks level up by getting XP during matches. All perks practically require you to do damage with their preferred weapons in order to get XP. There is also perk bonus XP. This type of XP is earned with certain conditions while using the perk. For example, headshots with gunslinger weapons, killing crawlers with firebug weapons, or killing highlighted invisible enemies with commando weapons. Every 5 levels, perks will unlock skills that provide the player with more versatility and power. You want to check these out and use them. The most important thing, however, when choosing these perk/roles is knowing how to use them. My personal recommendation is to experiment with each perk and understand how to use them for yourself. But since this is a guide and all, I am going to give a quick explanation of their strengths and weaknesses. Let's begin.
Fire!
The tank. Your main role is to protect the group. Muscle hits by parrying and blocking, and keep weaker Zeds away from the party. If you are a berserker who likes to run away from the group and fight Zeds on your own because that will secure you more money, you are part of the problem. I have had too many berserkers who like to run off away from the group just because it secures them survival. This is Killing Floor, not Call of Duty. When you separate from the group, it drastically decreases everybody's chance for survival. The berserker's main strength is being able to use melee weapons and abilities very effectively. They do have access to a couple of ranged weapons that do a lot of damage, but they are very limited when it comes to ammo supply, so make sure that the occasion calls for it. The only downside is that it is very difficult for them to take down larger Zeds, and they are very susceptible to range damage. When they are skilled appropriately, however, they are great skirmishers and will barely have to heal if they know how to parry. Crowd control and DPS is the name of the game with these guys. Commandos are great to have in any team composition. They instantly highlight any cloaked enemies within their eyesight, and they have access to assault rifles. Reload and Z times are greatly enhanced with them as well. Commandos can also see health bars on any type of enemy. This makes communication with a commando very important. The strengths of a commando is being able to control the fight in almost any way they see fit. They also have access to some of the most versatile weapons in the game. When skilled appropriately, they can be damage-focused or more crowd-focused. The downside of playing Commando is that they lack any kind of resistance towards damage. This makes them an easy target for flesh pounds and scrakes, but they can clean up sirens, stalkers, and husks with ease.
There you are,
Shotguns are your best friend, and you are the supplier of everyone's favorite currency, bullets. Your job as support is to, I know it sounds redundant, support your team in any way possible. With full access to shotguns, high penetration damage, and the ability for the party to collect ammo off of you, you are the ultimate team player. When skilled appropriately, support players have the choice to either be more tanky, focusing on crowd control, or having higher damage output, while also providing more ammo and armor for their teammates. The downside of a support character is in their versatility. They are really there for one thing and one thing only: taking out small to medium-sized Zeds in strictly close quarters combat while providing ammo to the team. The sooner they realize that, the better. The last thing I can say about them that is a plus is being able to use their welder much more effectively compared to others. This makes them invaluable in objective-based modes, and it allows them to control the flow of mobs much more easily. They can also repair doors that have been broken down.
Yeah!
Damage and range. That is your place, and you will like it. In fact, this perk makes it a point for you to like it. A great sharpshooter player is always marred for their great precision and excellent target prioritization. They do more damage than any other class to a single target. They can be skilled with bonuses and headshot damage, and can be skilled to make them more effective at ranged. Sharpshooters have access from mid to long range rifles, along with some experimental weapons that make them a little more versatile. With all of that damage dealing goodness, it does come with a major downside. They cannot handle large crowds too well because of their weapon selection. If a mob crowds them, they are basically done for. So if you do run a sharpshooter, be sure to have some close range support around to back you up. They can, however, be skilled to move faster, have faster fire rates, and increase reload speeds. So this can be countered to a degree. Their main strength lies in the ability to score headshots very easily. So utilize that if you decide to run this perk. The major upside to this perk is that they can take down larger Zeds very easily and quickly. The main thing that a sharpshooter should be concerned with are sirens, flesh pounds, and scrakes. As long as they prioritize their targeting to these types of Zeds and stay on the move, they can be an invaluable asset to the team. Ever wanted to feel like a gunslinging death dealer? Well, here is your chance. Gunslingers greatly excel in damage and headshots. Their main weapon of choice is pistols and hand cannons. Their true strength lies in their ability to score headshots and move with great speed. When skilled appropriately, they can get even greater damage output or greater staggered potential. The downside to this very powerful class is in its squishy design. Gunslingers may be able to take down flesh pounds and scrakes in mere seconds, but if any kind of Zed gets their hands on them, they are going to feel it. So it is best to utilize their speed as much as possible to avoid damage and keep the headshots rolling. The better you are at headshots with this perk, the better. The best team player is usually the one that keeps you alive the longest. The medic's main job is to keep players alive and provide covering fire for the team, which means they do not focus on bigger Zeds. They focus on killing the smaller ones. The medic will have access to a slew of different kinds of weapons, which are versatile, but what they have in versatility, they will lack in firepower. Every weapon for the medic comes with a healing ability for your fellow teammates. It is usually best for a medic to keep a weapon that fires healing darts. Healing darts recharge, and they do so quickly, unlike other weapons that have alternate firing healing grenade launchers that quickly run out. The downside of a medic is basically how much damage they can deal. They will not be taking down any larger or higher ranked Zeds unless they have a little help from the team. So if you notice that the medic is only taking out smaller enemies, they are doing their job right. They have greater movement speed like the gunslinger and heavy armor that increases in capacity as they level up. This allows them to slip in and out of danger relatively easily. They also have access to one of the best weapons in the game, healing grenades. I have pulled people out of more terrible situations than I can count using these things. These grenades are so disgustingly helpful, Zeds are rapidly poisoned by them, while you and your teammates are rapidly healed by them. The only thing that can really stop you from using them are sirens. But if your team is paying attention, and if you are paying attention, you will kill them before they even reach the party. Their healing darts can be enhanced to where they buff teammates and heal the medic themselves upon use. The syringe for the medic is incredibly buffed as well as they level up. It kind of makes me wonder why this class isn't used more often. But after a bit of pondering, I realize immediately nobody likes to be a healer in the game that glorifies killing everything. But regardless, if you are going to be attempting a high round endless run or a more difficult take on the survival mode, you or someone should definitely consider choosing this perk.
Gotcha!
Blow everything up. The world is your playground. Your main job when playing the Demolitionist is crowd control and taking out flesh pounds as soon as they spawn. When skilled appropriately, they can bring the pain to almost any Zed and can put an end to the biggest and toughest enemies in the game. They naturally get resistance to their own explosives and have an ability that allows them to escape death once per wave. As anyone can guess, the Demolitionist has access to explosive weapons exclusively. The roster of weapons that they have access to is very versatile and allows them to handle almost any situation. The only downside to these beasts is that they have a tendency to cause unnecessary damage to themselves, and they can run out of ammo relatively fast, so having more than one weapon on them is a godsend. When skilled appropriately, they lean more towards damage or versatility for their builds. Either way, it is great having these types of players on the battlefield with you. These absolute units are good at one thing and one thing only: tanking and wiping out swarms of weaker enemies. SMGs are their best friends on the battlefield. This allows them to take on swarms of smaller enemies and stay on the move with their near impenetrable armor. The only downside is that, like the medics, DPS is definitely an issue with them. They can survive being crowded relatively easily like berserkers can, but they need to be properly skilled for that. The quicker that they are on their feet, the better. Flesh Pounds and Sirens are their worst enemies because both enemies can take their health and armor down like nobody's business. The great thing about the SWAT perk is that they can be set up to be more tanky to where their armor takes all of the damage before their health does, or they can have it to where they can stumble and disable Zeds without too much of an issue. So understanding your playstyle with them is key. They also have a bad tendency of running out of ammo relatively quickly, so burst fire is recommended. Either way, they are great to have on the team, and can be a great equalizer for a high damage team composition.
Pyrotechnics!
These men and women want to see the world burn. The ground, that car over there, and especially Zeds. These guys are the ultimate crowd pleasers. They specialize in keeping a perimeter around players and keeping lesser Zeds occupied. If they are not close to the team barbecuing Zeds, they are not doing their job and need to switch to something else. The Firebug is surprisingly a pretty versatile perk. It makes you practically immune to fire damage, provides more ammo and reload times per level up. It has access to many different weapons for different situations. One of the main downsides with them is their lack of damage depending on what they are facing. Bigger Zeds will always swallow up their ammo count relatively quickly. The only time it doesn't apply to them is when they are using specific weapons like their microwave gun or a helix rifle. You can skill them to have more damage or to have more ammo and burning effects. It's up to you how a Firebug works. Either way, they are a great addition to any team composition.
Let's make you...
The Jack of all trades, the true master of none. The Survivalist is the most versatile perk in the bunch. Survivalists can be anything they want. Want to have specialties in demolitionist type weapons while having increased reload speeds with shotguns? You can do that. You want to have Zeds spontaneously combust randomly, disorienting groups? Go for it. Survivalists can be DPS or support, or a mix of both. These kinds of players are usually the type that have already been playing the game for some time and want to create their own class per se. The skills that they choose in their perk menu will greatly determine their role in the battlefield. You can have a little bit of everything, or you can focus on a specific type of role. Again, it is up to you. They can basically make up for anything that the team is lacking in. Need more damage against bigger targets? Switch your skills to heavy weapons training and make things go boom. Need more support and healing for the group? Switch over to medic training and ammo vest. They also get a passive boost to all forms of damage resistance, weapon swap speed, body armor capacity, and Z time reload speed. They also get access to some of the wackiest weapons in the game and can use any weapon with great effectiveness depending on their skill selection. A survivalist's greatest drawback, however, usually lies in the person who decides to play as them. Since the survivalist is not a true master to any role and is really meant to support the team where they need it most, those who decide to not fill that necessary role can become the problem. I have encountered many survivalists who usually choose to go with damage-based builds and only damage-based builds, when the team clearly needs more help with staying alive. Many can argue that this is invalid because the game is meant to be played however you like. To a degree, I understand. You are free to play however you like. However, when you are playing with a group of people and you decide to pick this perk, take this in mind. You are the ultimate flex. You hold almost all of the cards when it comes to completing a team's composition. Choosing to always play your way may not always doom the team's composition, but you, as a survivalist, can increase your team's odds of success by being a little more flexible. This perk alone has that capability.
Mankind should not plunder nature.
You may have noticed the clear emphasis of accuracy in headshots in this guide. That is because it is very important. The more headshots you score, the better. Even melee weapons have higher damage output when attacking the head. So if you happen to notice that other more experienced players are getting way more kills than you, and you happen to be rocking the Gunslinger or Commando perks, this may be a clear sign that you need to work on your aim. Accuracy plays a big part in Killing Floor 2 for this very reason. The more you are able to hit your mark, the more kills you get, and the more ammo you keep. Some Zeds can actually keep attacking and moving after having their heads taken off, especially in higher difficulties. Despite this, it does disable certain Zed abilities. When the Siren loses her head, she can no longer do major damage to the party. When a Husk loses his head, flaming shots can no longer be fired. Bloats lose their means of poisoning a party whenever their head is lost, and can often disable their poisonous explosion upon death. On top of that, any Zed that loses their head does eventually bleed out. Let's say it together now. Aim for the head. There are, however, two exceptions for this rule that I know of. Flesh Pounds and Edars. They have weak points on their chests. The Flesh Pound will take more damage if they are shot in the chest by explosives or any kind of weapon, as well as in the head. Edar's only weakness is in their chest. If you manage to finish them off with a shot in the chest, they will explode with an EMP pulse, disabling nearby Zed abilities for a short time. I'm sure this goes without saying, but the more players that stay alive and well kitted, the better a match goes. Remember that Dosh I was talking about? If you have players who are clearly struggling with resupplying in between waves, do yourself and your team a favor and throw some Dosh their way if you can afford it. If you hoard all of the Dosh that you earn and end up barely even using it, it goes to waste. Being a team player isn't about just sharing the Dosh. It also goes for healing. Everyone in the party comes with a healing syringe. In solo, the syringe's healing amount is 50 points, and its recharge rate is around 5 seconds. In co-op, however, this has changed. The syringe's healing amount is decreased to 20 points of health, and the recharge rate is doubled, if it is used on yourself. When it is used on somebody else, however, the recharge is halved. You get some Dosh depending on how much you heal the player for, usually around 12, and some medic experience points. As anyone can guess, it is heavily encouraged that you do use the syringe on someone other than yourself. This is heavily beneficial for you and your team. The medic experience points really do add up too. From doing this alone and not playing medic ever, that perk was at a level 5 by the time I even decided to use it. This was from me just healing other people other than myself. Burst Fire is your friend. Not only will this save you ammo, but it will also save your life. There are plenty of weapons that are fully automatic with high rates of fire that can burn through your ammo supply very quickly. Looking at you, SWAT. It's a real hassle and a possible death sentence whenever a player runs out of ammo in the middle of a wave, so control your fire. Your starter weapons are exactly what they are, starter weapons. Each class has a unique starter weapon, except for the survivalists. They get a random starter weapon per match, so they don't count. What you want to do is eventually sell that weapon and get something better. Starter weapons will not carry you through an entire match. It's usually better to at least buy a second or third tier weapon at some point during the match and upgrade it from there if you so desire. Weapons that can be bought from the merchant pod range from tier 2 weapons, usually around 650 to 850 Dosh, all the way to tier 4 through 5 weapons. These are usually worth around 1600 to 2000 Dosh. These weapons are that expensive for a reason. They will traditionally have better damage output or better versatility. I have seen several players who will stick with their starter weapons through the entirety of a match and come up short once the bosses come in. This may not apply to some endless matches considering that they are much weaker at round 5, but when it comes to traditional survival, it is not a feasible strategy. Alright, this is it. The big leagues. The ones that will either end up a bloody puddle or turn you into a bloody puddle. The bosses are nothing to scoff at in this game. Their whole purpose is to bring your game to an end, in one way or another. As of the making of this video, there are 5 bosses that you can possibly encounter in any game mode. It is never predetermined. It is always random. They will always spawn after the final wave of a survival match or every 5 waves in endless increasing in difficulty. I'm going to go over each boss and what each of their weaknesses are so that way you can have a fighting chance during these challenging encounters.
I'm back, and I've got some new tricks!
The original, the only, the Patriarch. The Patriarch has been around ever since the original game in 2009. He sports a minigun and a rocket launcher in order to attack from a range. The Patriarch has a nasty habit of cloaking and closing in on his prey. He will also use a tendril from his stomach in order to grab players and get a quick and brutal kick in. This can be parried, however, with a melee weapon. When his health gets dangerously low, he will cloak and run away in an attempt to heal himself and continue the fight. Most of the time, he is successful. A great way to counter this is to use flame weapons and or rifles that will continue to do damage to him as he runs away. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on how much HP he has and how much damage is being done to him in that moment. He can only do this a total of 3 times, so he won't be able to do this forever. Having a commando will put him at a major disadvantage for his cloak. Whatever you do, do not get separated from the group. He will single you out and hunt you specifically if this happens. Whenever a boss spawns, depending on how many players there are in a match, the boss gets a certain amount of HP. So it is expected that everyone does their fair share of damage on a boss. So take major note of this. If you do run away from your group and happen to be singled out by the Patriarch, do not expect to last very long if he does catch up to you.
Let's all participate in a little experiment.
Probably the most annoying boss in Killing Floor 2. The Matriarch is covered in armor and machinery. She has 2 phases that she goes through, the armored phase and the unarmored phase. Well, in the armored phase, she will shoot plasma beams to set the player on fire and electricity bolts to deal more direct damage, while covering herself with an energy shield. She will constantly attempt to close the gap between you two and deal as much melee damage as possible. When she loses a certain amount of health, she will summon a wave of Edars to distract the player and cause more damage. If you manage to get past the shield and destroy the helmet protecting the Matriarch's head, she will start her unarmored phase. She will become faster and more desperate in trying to close the distance. She will proceed to use her beams less while using a Siren Sonic shield in order to disable projectiles and cause major damage. The best thing to do with this boss is to either use explosives or microwave-based weapons in order to destroy her armor quickly. Microwave-based weapons will have the most effect on her. It is best to have DPS-based perks to keep a distance from her, while perks with more damage resistance keep her occupied in close quarters, weaving in and out of the fight. She is a very difficult boss and has the capability to end an entire party in a matter of seconds, so do not take her lightly. This guy is tough as he is ugly, and he is not afraid to show it. Wielding 2 giant axes and sporting full body armor, this thing will easily soak up whatever kind of damage you throw at it. But the armor does break eventually, exposing it to more damage. It will constantly spawn minions that will run at you, causing toxin damage. Best thing to do with this boss is to focus on him specifically and try to ignore the minions as much as possible. And if you need to retreat and heal, only use your lesser weapons to keep the minions at bay. The best kind of weapon to use against the Abomination is the microwave gun until his armor is broken. Again with the microwave gun, huh? But whenever any piece of armor is broken, he will enter an enraged state and tackle a player doing massive damage. Best thing that can be done in this situation is to either parry/block him with a melee weapon and have your team shoot him in the process. He will enter this state 3 times depending on how low his health is, in addition to his armor breaking. So when this happens, use the opportunity to cause as much pain as possible. Eventually, he will die. You thought the original Flesh Pound was bad? Say hello to his more messed up and powerful big brother. The King Flesh Pound is not terribly difficult. He will spawn in quarter pounds in order to disrupt the team formation whenever he hits around 65% of health. His behavior isn't unlike a normal flesh pound. They are very similar, so take those precautions when facing him. The last thing that could be said about him is his last phase when he hits below 20% of health. Once in this state, he will raise an energy shield that will need to be destroyed in order to do more damage to him and finish him off. During this phase, it is best to just concentrate fire on his chest, since it is a weak point. This will disable the shield faster. Explosive weapons and their microwave gun will be your best bet to deal maximum damage to him.
Still alive? Bravo! I would shake your hands, but I shall just eviscerate you instead.
The Mad Doctor himself. He's over a century old and he can still bring the pain like any other boss. Hans has a talent for mixing things up whenever he is on the battlefield. He will start off by throwing gas grenades and softening up players with dual assault rifles. Best thing to do with him is to surround him and aim for his back, chest, and head. Hitting his arms and legs will do little to no damage. He's extremely susceptible to fire and explosives. He will go through about 3 phases before finally going down. When he loses about a third of his health, he will pop an energy shield and run away in an attempt to get some distance before running for a player and leeching some health off of them. If your party manages to destroy the shield before he reaches somebody, this will stop the attack and progress to the next phase. He will repeat this 2 more times before getting more aggressive with physical attacks and using frag grenades more often. So the best thing to do against this guy is to stay on the move and use cover while keeping the pressure on him. If you have a Firebug or Demolitionist on your team, they are the main thing that will damage Hans. He will summon Zeds to assist him in the fight after he loses a good third of his health. He can also be damaged while draining somebody of health. This is quite the guide, and I have worked really hard to provide the necessary and most helpful advice that I can think of when it comes to Killing Floor 2. For a game with such a simple concept, there really is a lot to it. The tutorial in the game is really good at explaining basic game mechanics, so that is why I didn't dive too deep into that. I tried to focus on the info that the game doesn't tell you up front. I hope this guide finds you well and helps you to some capacity. If it did, please leave a like. It helps the channel. If you have more tips and tricks that you can provide to newer players, leave them in the comments below and spread that wealth of knowledge. If you want to see me talk about more nerd stuff, subscribe and hit that bell icon. I hope to see you in the next video.